Oki, hello there, and welcome to the Fox Den. Nistu anagok biksipidaki. I am Andrea Truejoy Fox, your host for Talks with a Fox. I'm happy you have joined me on this colorful adventure of self-discovery and lifelong learning. Throughout my journey, I have met some amazing human beings who are living inspirational and intentional lives as they fulfill their purpose and share their gifts with the world. I am excited to share these conversations with you, as well as some stories from my life as a Blackfoot woman, Nitsitabyaki, and as a teacher and artist who is navigating through this exciting and beautiful world we live in, challenges and all. So grab a tea or coffee and get ready to feel inspired as you reflect on your own exciting journey and your connection to the world. We are in this together, and there is so much for us to learn and share. Let's do this. I just want to thank you for following this wonderful journey and for connecting with Talks with a Fox on all of our social media and liking and commenting on our page. We appreciate all the inquiries that we have received regarding how you can further support Talks with a Fox podcast. So we have gone ahead and set up a Patreon account where you can subscribe and support the podcast. Feel free to go to patreon.com/Talks with a Fox podcast. There's also a link to the Patreon page on our Buzzsprout page where you can donate the amount of your choosing. It means so much to me that you are on this journey with us. Okay, Danze. I have a very lovely guest here who I am just so excited to talk with and share these wonderful and powerful and very important stories she is putting out in the world that are especially pertinent to Indigenous issues and more locally in Canada that are happening to our people. And I just can't wait for her to share with us what she has discovered and how she is making a difference in the world of journalism. I want to welcome Brandi Morin, who is an award-winning French, Cree, Iroquois journalist from Treaty 6, Alberta, Canada. And Brandi, for the last 10 years, has specialized in sharing Indigenous stories, some of which have helped spark change and reconciliation in Canada's political, cultural, and social environments. Oki Tanze Brandi.
Tanze, hi. Thank you so much for having me, Andrea.
Yes, welcome. And thank you for sharing a slice of your time with us, because I know you are just out there always keeping up with the know of what's going on across the country and in our community. So welcome. And I can't wait to talk about everything that you do.
Yes, it's such a privilege and an honor. I'm grateful to be here. I'm so excited about what you're doing, with your podcast. So, hi. So happy to talk to you.
Okay, so thank you for that, by the way. Thank you for those kind words. And I'm super itching here to get into some of these very big stories you were covering most recently and even previously. But before we get to that, can you just tell us about yourself? Like you are from Treaty 6 and you've got several cultures that you're part of. Where did it all begin for you, Brandi? Where did you grow up? And, you're part of the French, Korean, Iroquois histories.
Yes. So, wow, that's 40 years ago now.
No way.
Yes, I just turned 40 in June. But yeah, I grew up in around just west of Edmonton, in and around a small little place, a small little town called Stony Plain. Um, I didn't have the opportunity to really connect with my Indigenous culture in a positive way until later on in my life. So, growing up, I just was exposed to a lot of the, you know, family dysfunction and, different traumas that Indigenous, peoples often, face and grow up with. So for me, from the age of 6 until my early teenage years, I was in and out of the foster care system. So I would go back and forth between foster homes or group homes and with my family. It was a pretty tough and rough upbringing. But I managed to, battle my way through a lot of adversity. I did end up becoming a single mother at 18 years old. And by the time I was 24 years old, I was a single mother of 3. Um, Again, I, overcame a lot of different obstacles to, you know, um, create a path in my career now as a journalist. And I'm now a mother of 5 children, 4 of which are living. So, how I really got connected with my culture as a mixed woman was I was always very close with my kokum, my grandmother, on my mother's side. So a lot of times when things were bad at home, I would live with my kokum a lot when I wasn't in a foster care, setting. And we were really close. And my Cookham was a residential school survivor. She also overcame a lot of different adversities. She had a lot of different struggles. She struggled with, alcoholism and, abusive relationships and things like that. So I was exposed to a lot of dark things about who we were and a loss of connection, to our uh, Indigenous blood. The connections that we seem to have from it were just a result of so many different, colonial connections and traumas. I mean, I had basic understandings of, certain cultural, uh, you know, uh, minimal cultural aspects, like Cookham made bannock, and she spoke a little bit of Cree here and there, and that kind of thing. With my Cookham, she passed away in 2018, and she passed away of cancer. And it wasn't until around that time that I started getting, you know, reconnected to who I was as a Métis woman, like really delving into what that was and what that meant. And I just began a journey of seeking that out, and went on this path of discovery in different ways, and really fell in love with everything, that means. So that's a little bit about of where I come from, and just a little bit about how I the gist of what started me into my career.
Mhm. Well, it's beautiful that you had that time with your grandmother, and, our grandmothers have so much beauty and strength in them that, for those of us that are blessed to have time with them, it's really a gift, and now you're taking those teachings with you wherever you go in the world, and as a mother yourself and how you're raising your children. I think that's really so powerful, and I'm happy to hear that you had that connection to her, in your as you were growing up.
Yes, thank you.
So tell me, I'm curious, how did getting into journalism, through this, your journey where you were with growing up, and
hmm
experiences that you've had, and stories you've collected along the way, how did your pathway connect to telling stories of others?
Yeah. So journalism for me kind of served as an outlet of hope and an outlet of stability for me, because I was a single mother, and struggling on many different levels. Um, and that dream of writing, that dream of storytelling, always helped to keep me focused that there would be something better. Um, so when I was actually 21, at that time, I had my two oldest children. They were aged 1 and 2. And I moved out to a small town in southern Manitoba for a bit. I was actually dating my friend's husband's friend. So she had married a man, and I met his best friend at their wedding and started dating him. 21, young and love struck, how that can go. So I moved out there with my two little kids, and well, my friend was living out there too, but I was pretty far from home at the time. While I was there, I just really I got this urge to write. I had always enjoyed writing. I'd always journaled, growing up. And one day I went to the office of the local newspaper there. It was a small community newspaper called the Red River Valley Echo. And I asked to meet with the editor. She was a nice older lady. I introduced myself. I said, I'd like to write. And she took me in under her wing and gave me an opportunity to write small community stories. And I was just like thriving. I just like felt in that moment that, you know, that was what I was supposed to be doing. I absolutely loved it. It helped give me a sense of purpose and a sense of worth in so much, and to meet the people that I was doing or that I was meeting, and I loved it. But I ended up moving back to Alberta when I broke up with that man. Moved back with my kids about a year later, and I did not do any writing again for a number of years because at that time the money in the kind of work that I was doing wasn't the greatest, and I needed to make a living for my kids and me. So I actually went to college and I became a legal assistant. And I became a legal assistant because a friend of mine was a legal assistant and I really admired and looked up to her. So I thought, well, she's doing that. Maybe I'll do it too, and maybe I'll be good at it. So I did do it, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like it too much. It just wasn't for me. But I mean, I learned a lot. In the time that I was a legal assistant, I worked for years in and out of different office environments. But again, I was not happy. I didn't feel fulfilled doing that. So when I was 29, I was doing a lot of soul searching. I was, reading different books about, life purpose, and doing a lot of praying and seeking about what I was supposed to do because I was in a place of feeling completely lost. And by that time, I was a single mother of 3 kids. My oldest was 10. So I had a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 5-year-old at that time. And one day, I was praying and I got this idea to put a portfolio of some of my work together and my resume, and to take it to Spruce Grove, which is next to the town that I live in of Stony Plain, and presented to the editor. And when I got this thought, it seemed to come out of nowhere. I believe it was from Creator.
Mm-hmm.
And it just it scared me because at the time it intimidated me, the thought of working for my home community newspaper, because it was like a distribution of 50,000 and it was my home community with people I grew up with. And it was like this huge deal. And I was just like, I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel good enough like that I could do that. And at the same time, I was just like imagining how incredible that would be if I could do that and have that opportunity. So I got brave. And I think about a week later or so, I printed off some of my, articles that I had written and my resume, and got dressed up and went to the office in Spruce Grove to the Stony Plain Reporter, Spruce Grove Examiner. I asked if the editor was available. So they brought the editor out front. His name's Carson. And we went into a meeting room, and I just bravely introduced myself, even though I was shaking in my boots, and I was really wearing boots. I was wearing knee-high sparkle cowgirl boots. I mean, they were fashionable. No, seriously, they were fashionable, but they must have thought I was like pretty wild.
I love it.
But I introduced myself to him and showed him my work and told him, that I was passionate about writing. And I just said, "Do you happen to have any opportunities open?" He goes, "Well, your timing is impeccable because we're looking to hire a full-time reporter right now." And like something like that doesn't come up too often in these small communities. So I was just blown away, and I was just like, wow, I feel like I'm meant to be here. And so I had to go through the application process, and I 2 weeks later I was hired and on the job. And so I did that for 2 years working in my local community, and again, absolutely loved it. I got exposed to so many different areas, so many different beats. I, reported a little bit in politics and in entertainment, and you know, um, personal community stories, and I just loved it. Um, about a year into that, I noticed the discrepancies between the Indigenous communities and mainstream media, and how Indigenous stories were being reported and portrayed. And it bothered me because there was so many stereotypes, so many negativities and harmful things that were being circulated. And I just knew that there was more. And I approached my editor and I said, you know, I want to do something about this. And I said, can I start writing about our nearby communities? Because we have some First Nation reserves and different things. I said, I want to start to go out and create relationships, and I want to write, go right into the communities and write about, their culture, their people, their traditions. I didn't know what to expect because I live in a really like white community. And he went for it, and he was like really supportive and really grateful. So we named this weekly feature called Aboriginal Aspects. And it was a weekly feature. And I, met with elders, or, people that were doing really cool things, or just interesting human type stories, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that helped to ignite a passion and a fire for more of that. And I just knew that that's what I wanted to be doing full time. I just couldn't get enough. I just had this hunger. But a little while later, I'd say maybe 8 months later or so, Carson ended up leaving as editor, and he went on to a different job. And there were some more changes that happened there at that newspaper. And within a couple of months, there was a new editor, a new publisher, new staff, and they cut my Aboriginal Aspects feature. There had been previous, like, we dealt with few people that called in threatening to boycott the paper, complaining about the feature, the typical racist, viewpoints and all that kind of stuff. But Carson, he stood by that, and we kept it going. So when these new people came in, they decided that it wasn't interesting anymore, and they didn't need it. Within a couple of weeks of that, I was actually called into the publisher's office out of nowhere, and she said, "You know what? We're looking for different things now," and they let me go. And I was just like completely devastated and completely shocked, and I didn't really understand, what had happened or what I did wrong. And it was really heavy on me for a while, and I always wondered if it was connected to my work that I was doing, right, to try to build bridges and reconciliation, with our communities. And maybe it, at the time, they didn't want that. The new people that came in didn't want it. But it ended up turning out to be a blessing because just a few months later, I got a new opportunity to work with APTN. And from there, everything kind of just like exploded to where I'm at now. So,
Well, first of all, it was definitely their loss, but more importantly, yes, like you said, look at where you are now, and you're having the freedom to direct your own
mhm.
journalist journey, write without censorship. And I want to go back to where you talked about how, you approach these places, these newspapers, and these different media sources. I think that is so incredible. You created your own opportunities rather than wait for someone to take notice of your writing. And, you know, you just did a wonderful job of getting in control of
Yeah.
starting your own journalist journey. And I think that's amazing, Brandi, because we need to do more of that rather than, wait and hope somebody knows about us or discovers our talents and gifts. But I think that's amazing. It's very telling about who you are as a woman.
Oh, thank you. But I also like was in survival mode because I struggled as a single parent. I struggled raising them. I was alone and I didn't always have the best examples growing up. And I had my family around, yes, because we've reconciled, to help. But there were times when I didn't have an income. There were several times when I accessed the food bank. When you're under that kind of like survival mode, you're stressed mentally and emotionally and spiritually and physically. And so for me, holding on to that dream of something better, something more was like a lifesaver. And so I went after that because I could have been a statistic like so many others. I could have been a statistic of a missing or murdered woman with the way that I grew up. I could have been a statistic of a woman struggling with addictions. I could have been a statistic of a woman who gave up on her dreams because the storms of life tried to take her down. And that just wasn't an option for me. And I just kept fighting for that. And it was just like a light that I always looked to as an outlet of a way to give myself and my children and others hope. So I'm just so grateful because I know some people in this life are lost, and I've been lost like you wouldn't believe before. But it's one thing to be lost, but it's another thing to be lost and not know where you're going or have an idea of what your purpose is. And I, you know, had a vision and I had that to look forward to. And I'm so thankful because I just would have felt completely hopeless. And I don't know where I'd be right now.
Wow. Yes. I mean, that is true living, true resilience. And, as Indigenous women, we have, that is our survival, is that resilience and the storms of life. I love how you articulated that. That's a really
Mm,
beautiful and powerful way to look at it when, life is taking us through a storm. But also in your resilience, that outlook and that hope, having that hope and not despairing.
mm,
Um, and you've been raising such beautiful, strong children, and you're giving them those tools of resilience and also to thrive, to
yeah,
move beyond surviving but thriving. And our people, as we continue to share our stories, we are shifting more into thriving mode rather
yeah,
than simply surviving despite what colonialism
yeah.
has how it has impacted us.
But I think also, too, as a storyteller, my past plays a big role in what I do because I'm able to empathize and relate to so many of the stories and so many of the people. Like, even for instance, like when I was 24 years old, my youngest was a year and a bit old, maybe. I had my children taken from me because I was going through a really rough time. I was depressed and I went through a party period because that party period for me was my way of expressing and numbing the the toxicity and the depression that I was feeling. But I got my kids taken away from me for a year, and it was absolutely devastating. And I also had my family there to step in and to help and to take them, because, that cycle could have been repeated that I lived through. And so I was able to get them back, and I love them. I'm so proud of them now. But these struggles and a lot of these lived experiences just helps me to be able to also be a great storyteller, to be a great connector to our people who are often struggling with lots of these things, right? So when I look at it that way, I think, well, it actually is an asset to have come through a lot of those things, so that um so that I can do what I'm doing meaningfully today.
That's so I admire that so much and respect that about you because yeah, you turned your challenges in your younger life into opportunities to empathize and uplift others by helping them find their voices in the stories that you're telling. Um,
Hmm.
I'm just, and I've looked at I love following your journalist journey. I love hearing all these stories that you're sharing, and they're so important, and the world needs to hear more about it,
Yeah.
because right now there's just not enough awareness and education about what Indigenous people encounter. We're not just
Yes.
talking about, what has happened. We're living what is still
Yes.
happening. And I look at the very you have a very rich portfolio, and I mean you're also talking about the beautiful things that are happening in our communities. There was a story you did on uh, Cree grandmother who was working with some offenders. can
Yeah.
you can you tell me about that, because that really intrigues me.
Yeah. So this was a couple of years ago now, I think 2 or 3 years ago. I don't remember the elder's name off the top of my head, the woman that I worked with, but she is a Cree elder uh, from Treaty 6, and she worked at the Bowden prison with the Indigenous prisoners there. And I was just looking at their program that they do with their Indigenous prisoners, just how to use culture to help rehabilitate them and reconnect them. And so she was a character that I featured from her perspective as to some of the ways that they work with them, to have compassion on them, and to just really look at where they've come from to help guide to where they, how they can heal. And it was a very like powerful experience, because I got to go right into the jail, and it took about 6 to 8 months to get all the okays to go in, because we took a camera in there and everything for CBC. It was when I was at CBC Indigenous. But I went into a couple of the offenders' cells that I was interviewing, and at the time, I didn't really extensively know their backgrounds as to what they were in there doing, like in there for. I didn't find out till after, but I'm kind of glad that I didn't know it all right then, because I probably would have been really scared to be there, with them.
Mm.
But I was safe, I was protected, and hopefully was able to portray their experiences, to the world, and to help show the need for reconciliation and healing within the prison, system. So that was pretty awesome, and we did that as part of a truth and reconciliation series that CBC had worked on.
Wow. And so, yeah, I mean, when we take for, I think the general public, sometimes we take for granted, oh, here's another news story, but we don't often really think deeply about what it took to get that story, from the physical environments you journalists, put yourselves in, and then the relationship building and then putting it together, and then telling a story telling it with integrity at the same time. And that's what I just love about you, Brandi. I love because your stories are true and you are shedding light on the truths for others. And
Wow.
that's amazing.
Wow. Thank you so much. That's encouraging to hear because lately I've been dealing with a lot of backlash and hate over my work. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because the world itself is just in such a state of upheaval and, um, you know, the racism crisis is at the top of every conversation, and the rallies and the protests, right? So, plus the pandemic, everything's so heightened right now. But the past like few months doing my work has been the most intense that I've ever experienced in the last like in 10 years. And just a lot of like haters and a lot of opposition and, you know, things like that. So I'm encouraged to hear that because that's what I strive for. I strive to be authentic. I strive to humanize the stories, you know, of our people. And it's about reconciliation as well because the media and our communities are also broken, similar to like the relationships like similar to Canada and Indigenous nations, and how those relationships are broken. Like I was saying before, media coverage often misses the mark of reporting the stories of our people. And a lot of our people hold a lot of mistrust towards, you know, the media, and so it is about going in there and building relationships and building trust. And it does help to do this when you're Indigenous, because then, you know, you're automatically welcomed and accepted. But at the same time, I have worked hard to build up uh, my name and my work, and built hard to, you know, create many relationships where our people trust me to be truthful and authentic in bringing our stories to Canada and to the world.
Well, I just want to say to those haters, Brandi is not going anywhere, and Brandi is, she's a warrior. You're a warrior woman, Brandi. And yes, anytime the truth is being told, it is going to create discomfort. It is going to create sometimes pain. And it's going to bring to light even more things that are happening. And you're a truth teller. So,
Mm.
you have my support, and I know there's so many others out there who support the work you're doing. We've got your back, and it's like that muscle, and you've got that kink in your back, and you don't want to touch it because you're going to feel the pain, but you just got to keep working away at it, and eventually, you can work through it where it starts to loosen up a bit. And that's society right now. There's
Wow.
a lot of kinks out there, and you and the others who are truth tellers are working away at it. And I applaud you, the work you do in the field you're in, because it's not easy work, and it often sometimes may feel thankless at times, and then you become subjected to the violence of others, even in their words, how they may express, their disdain for what you're saying, or even hatred. But keep on going, and you have it in you to do this work. I also don't think just anyone can do this work. We all have our gifts and our purpose in this world, and you are certainly a gifted storyteller and truth teller, and you have that warrior woman spirit with you, and that's why you're able to do what you do. And I'm
Amazing.
proud of you,
Thank you. Did you know that I actually got a tattoo last week that is in Cree syllabics that stands for warrior? Because
Oh,
well, because I just it's been a struggle lately, through different things happening in my career, different things coming at me, and I needed a reminder to ground me. And that reminder is, yes, I am a warrior in this. And to me, that just means somebody of strength, somebody of truth and somebody that's blessed by creator to do this, and it's a reminder for me. So for you saying that is just it lines up with this, so that's awesome.
Wow. Did you post that on your social media? Because I don't think I caught that. I
I
probably
think
would
I
have,
did.
maybe I missed it. Okay. I got to check it out.
No, it's
And
all
that's
good.
amazing. I guess it takes me to, I'm curious, how do you take care of yourself, right? Because as you're taking, as you're taking care of others by telling these stories, how do you take care of yourself? What
Hmm.
do you do for wellness?
Yeah, so that's been a discussion I've been having a lot lately with some of my colleagues. I know a lot of other journalists are feeling the fatigue of reporting lately because of the stressful times that we're living in, right? I think people in general are. So I've been, trying to create that balance of self care because usually I do pretty good at it, but I've been working a lot lately. So I think since the George Floyd protests, like since George Floyd was murdered in Minnesota, since June, the beginning of June, or I think that was the end of May. I'm not exactly sure. I felt like I've been working 24/7. So I've been on the road and I've been working. So I was on multiple national TV, like panels and commentaries and writing op-eds, plus doing my stories and on the road. And it, these stories were intense trauma based stories. So it started to take its toll more than ever. And I was having trouble sleeping. I was actually experiencing nightmares at night when I was in Wet'suwet'en territory in July in my hotel for like 2 or 3 nights in a row. I was shooting up straight out of bed with horrific nightmares because of the situations that I was witnessing there. And I had to actually, get some sleeping pills to help me sleep. That's the kind of
Mhm,
toll that it was starting to take. And so I was really on a, I was searching for how to um, maintain our mental, spiritual, emotional, physical health through this. And so I was talking, to some other friends and colleagues of mine, and looking at those different ways. And some of the obvious ones are by exercising. And I've been slacking at that because when I was so busy, and then you're drained emotionally and mentally from doing these stories, you feel like
mhm,
you don't have the energy or the time. but
mhm,
um but that's not an excuse, because exercise works in the opposite way, where it actually releases endorphins to help you to feel better. And doing that physical activity will give you more energy. So I'm on a mission to get that back into gear, because since June, I've really slacked on it because I've been on the road a lot. And I have noticed the difference in the energy levels and in so many different things. So that is an area that is really, really important. Also, the way that we eat is medicine. um,
mhm,
Again, I was on a really great healthy eating plan. Not a diet, but just wholesome, healthy, organic, life giving. And then when I went on the road, it all went to crap. you know? And again, I'm noticing the effects, because that's going to affect your mind. When you eat that sugar and you eat that junk and you're grabbing processed food, that affects your mind. It affects the clarity of mind, it clouds your mind, as well as helping you to feel sluggish in your body, let alone making you chubbier. So um, I know that I have, that's another thing that I have to get into alignment. And then also
mm,
journaling. I think journaling and gratitude, because when you do gratitude, it helps to focus what you're grateful for, instead of always be bombarded by the negativities. That has made a huge difference for me. And prayer, um, for me, I connect best to Creator, to God, when I'm out in nature. So
mhm,
I try to, like, now it's the summer months, I try to be out like by the river or somewhere. where I physically see and sense and touch and feel and breathe in creation. And that's where I feel like it helps me to rejuvenate and restore and, talk to God. And just another good self-care is just tuning out of social media. And that's another
Mhm.
area I struggle at because it's addicting and then you feel
Mhm.
responsible. And it's like, but I have to put my foot down with myself because it's unhealthy when it's too much. So
Yeah.
next week, I'm taking a week off and I'm trying to log out of most of my social media. It's going to be a test, but it's almost like a cleanse. You know what I
Yes.
mean? A cleanse and a resetting because we need it. We're human. We can't take all of that in because that's all different energies that we're taking in from the technology and from all the crap that's on there, right? So it's, we have to find that healthy balance.
Wow, yeah, exactly. It's unplugging and disconnecting to reconnect with ourselves.
Yes.
You couldn't have put it a better way, with how, the and recognizing that. I think that's some really amazing self-insight because sometimes we just, and the way the world is and life, we get so busy and occupied with everything else that we get stuck in these patterns and then until
Yeah.
something happens or something comes across our pathway that says, wait a minute, let's just stop for a minute. And what are we doing? And why are we doing this?
Well, look at that's what COVID did. I think COVID did that to many of us with being our world
Yes.
stopping and being stuck at home and, being in isolation and all this stuff. And at first, it was a really scary experience for me. But then, a few weeks into it, I actually, took the opportunity to um, go on a health journey. And it was so healing. And it was it was such a good thing. But then when real life started to come back, then I didn't keep it up. And do I ever notice the difference? So what you're saying about, yeah, we need to stop, we need to get our priorities in gear and stick to them, because I don't think that we can do this type of work sustainably if we're not keeping those kind of balances.
That's beautifully put. And hopefully there are other aspiring journalists or just journalists out there who, even if they're well on their way in their career like yourself, are listening to this and, having that little reminder there to, while it's so important the work you're doing, it's also important that you take care of yourself so you can continue to do the work you're doing. And yeah, connecting with nature, the food we put in ourselves, getting the sleep. Yes, I can relate with you on that. I'm on my healing journey too and working on those things. And for me, it's been sleep. That seems like a
Mm,
battle. I got into a pretty unhealthy cycle from university and then it led on into teaching, just overworking and not getting enough sleep and then going again. And, it catches up to you. So
yes.
yeah, it's good to hear these affirmations of how we can take care of ourselves. And, they are really smaller decisions that we make every day that lead up to bigger changes in our life, I believe.
Oh, absolutely. Like just huge impacts. It's a huge
Mhm.
difference. And this is making me it's just reiterating to myself that I gotta walk my talk again.
I'm with you.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I wanted to ask you about where things are at with like you did some story coverage. You're most recently publishing with Al Jazeera. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I work freelance, so I work with a number of different outlets. My most recent one was with the National Observer. I have another one coming out with Al Jazeera. I often juggle with multiple like assignments at once. So I actually had the opportunity to work for Elle Canada recently, so I've written two.
Yes.
Yeah, I've written two um, stories for them. Well, one was an op-ed. Actually, they were both op-eds. And that was really awesome because, of course, like as a young teenager, I had Elle, I would rip out the pages of the
Yeah.
magazines and stick them to my wall. Come on. And so
Smell the perfumes.
yes, rub them. Yeah, exactly. And so, like, that was like really awesome to me. And just the fact that they are interested in our stories and want to publish them.
Mhm.
And, I've been doing a lot of work for the Toronto Star. Those have been op-eds that have been run nationally, and even Huff Post Canada, and
New York Times.
yes,
Yeah, Vice Canada.
yes. There's a I'm really blessed to have these opportunities, but I'm most proud that our stories are getting international attention through Al Jazeera, and I want to start focusing on getting our stories out to an international audience more, because I think that if the rest of the world really understands or knows what's going on here, and a lot of the human rights violations that are happening, and the
Mhm.
inequities within Indigenous nations here, that I think the world would be outraged, and maybe the world would help hold to account Canada, because Canada portrays itself to the world as this, you know, democratic, peaceful, liberal country, but
Yes.
it's oppressing Indigenous peoples at the same time. And
Mhm.
not very many people outside of Canada are aware of this. So, I just hope to get our voices out there, but not just, you know, the inequities, but share the beauty about who we are as
Mhm.
people, share our cultures, share the things that we're fighting for on our land, share the beauty of our lands and our waters, share about our next generation, share about the stories of our elders and our languages. There is so
Yes.
much there, waiting to be shared with the world, that could help be so enriching, to the world. Like, even like a story idea such as, like, I have one for Elle coming up. Nobody scoop me. No, but I have it. But like, what about and I want to feature different Indigenous women that care for their land, but put it in the perspective of what Indigenous women can teach you how to care for the earth or how to care for the land, and bring out that other, other cultures of the world to show and share what we have, what we can offer, and just create those conversations and help open, those doors. So there's just so much opportunity. Things may be heavy, and things may be really toxic and even like scary to work in sometimes, but there's also like so much good there, so much inspiration, and exciting news and stories that are just there waiting.
I think this is definitely a dream job. I mean, you're traveling, you're connecting with so many people of
Ah,
different walks of life, and you're sharing their stories, and you're learning lots about the communities that you're connecting with, and then you're putting it out there to the world. And it's very important work that you're doing. I mean,
mm,
wow, being a journalist is amazing. And yeah, it is not a job for just anyone. And there's so much involved, and the behind the scenes that you guys do and what you go through. Like I said, yeah, it's very incredible work that you do. And I do appreciate that. Yes, that you are also helping to break those stereotypes, the marginalizations of our people, by telling those stories also of the beauty in our communities. And we need to see more of that too. I mean, traditionally, media has only really ever focused on, what's happening in Indigenous communities in a negative light, and also from their perspective versus Indigenous perspectives. And that's why your work is even more important, because you are that Indigenous voice providing that Indigenous insight into these stories. And that is a piece that's still missing very much in media.
exactly. And a lot of the times media just gets it wrong. And but
Yes.
then at the same time, we're told by that mainstream media that we're biased because we're Indigenous journalists, and they're telling an Indigenous story. Well, that'd be like, well, if you're white, don't go tell any white stories then. And and we're telling these from the Indigenous perspective
Yeah,
because they've never been told from the Indigenous perspective. It's always from that
exactly.
other perspective, and you have to be able to help inform and shift that narrative. For people to be able to understand, you know, what's going on. It's so important.
And I think that's what's making a lot of people in society uncomfortable is because for the very first time, our truths are being told
Yeah.
and not just being told, but they can no longer be ignored. The
Yes.
history and then the ongoing violence and mistreatment that Indigenous people face, in
Yeah.
Canada, as specifically, and of course, on the other side of the border. And so, okay, so I wanted to ask you about there's a story. Well, I've been being an Indigenous woman, Blackfoot woman myself, missing and murdered Indigenous women is something that, I'm deeply connected to in how our women are treated and what happens to us. So any sort of stories that come out about that, I always want to follow it. And
Hmm.
more specifically, these pipeline. You did a story with Al Jazeera in May, pipelines, man camps, and murdered Indigenous women in Canada. Can you,
Hmm.
I'd love to hear more of your perspective on that. What's going on there?
Yeah. So, gosh, I've been writing about this subject for a few years now. I originally did an in-depth kind of investigative piece with National Observer about 3 years ago, linking, pipeline man camps to violence against Indigenous women and girls. But it was based from a report that was released by some BC First Nations in northern BC, and this report they commissioned when the CGL pipeline was coming in, and so I've always been following that. And last year, the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, the final report that was released, it cited the connections between resource extraction industry and violence against women um, and girls, and how the two go hand in hand. So the impacts to the land translate to impacts to the women, and there was recommendations for governments, institutions, industries to take steps to try to reconcile what was going on. As we know, the Canadian government has yet to implement the calls to action, even though Justin Trudeau promised at the release of the final report, he gave his word that his government would do everything in their power to take action to invest in as soon as they could. But it's been put off. So in May, was that? Did it come out in May? That
Yeah.
piece, yeah. So I had written that for Al Jazeera because they had been following my work on that particular subject. So I just did, a further in depth look from people in the communities that were impacted. So I featured April Eve, who was sexually exploited and sent to the Fort Mac area to service men working in the oil and gas industry. She experienced several violent, life-threatening, encounters, and just gave her testimony as to what that was like and what she's seen, and the correlations between industry and again, abusing and using women, because a lot of times these camps will be overridden with men that are struggling with addictions and making a whole lot of money, and they are looking to let off steam, and it comes out in a violent way. And they often don't have any connections to the communities that they're going to. So they're going into remote communities or fly in and fly out communities that are often situated, close to Indigenous communities. And they don't have a connection or care about that land. They're into go in and make their money and get out. So while they're there, and if they have, other things that they're, doing, such as, drinking or drugs or anything like that, um, any sort of behaviors that, come out in that are, taken out on the locals and particularly vulnerable people, the Indigenous women. So that was just really, really important to raise awareness about in these stories, because our governments often have industrial projects as their top priority, because it correlates
Mm-hmm.
to economic gain and money in people's pockets, but they often don't consider these other impacts that are devastating vulnerable communities. And we have a crisis, a genocidal crisis in Canada, with missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and no resources or investments are being put behind um, stopping it. And so I think it's important to follow these different, I guess, what would they be called? These different areas that are contributing, to this ongoing genocide. So my work in Wet'suwet'en territories, coming up, and what's going to be published yet, also has to do with looking more deeply into that and how the people there are affected by industry, because that area is along the Highway of Tears. So it's an
Mm.
area where, over 50 women have disappeared or have been murdered over just over 50 years. And again, it's correlated to industrial activity there. And so I just really want to dig deeper, into that.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, you know, this is so important. And for anybody out there who's listening and who is not part of Indigenous communities, this is another way to truly be part of reconciliation by becoming aware of these issues and understanding what's happening, and most importantly, listening to the Indigenous voices that are telling these stories. And Brandi, you are one of these very important people in our communities, and um, I know that, going into these communities, you're also coming into spaces that have encountered trauma, and
Hmm.
you're sitting with individuals who have encountered trauma. And I know you have such a big heart and a strong spirit. And um, it's it's so wonderful that we have this ability to be able to share the information. These are the ways that it's in these ways that I really appreciate technology, because it allows us
Yes.
to, elevate our voices and to share them out into the world. And I
Yes.
think that's really important. Indigenous journalism, such an important and a very, very essential part of providing insight into the world about our communities. Do you find, um, do you find, are there Are you seeing a lot of more Indigenous journalists come up as well? Is there a community that, is being built, and for you guys to reach out to each other?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of growth over the last 10 years, and it's quite encouraging. We're still just a small group of people. We need more of us, but we are growing. We have just a few that are, what we would call like seasoned, and then a lot of up and comers. I'm actually having the opportunity to mentor some of them, and
Wow.
it's just beautiful. It's exciting. They're just like so on fire and passionate, and a lot of them are young women. It's like, yeah, like
Wow.
it's and we're pretty supportive of each other and across the board, like with different even if, some are with CBC, some are with other, CTV, some are with other mainstream outlets or freelance, and we do gravitate towards each other, and we do find each other. And we I recently took part in, actually last night, Angela Starrett, who is
Mm-hmm.
um, a beautiful Gitsan journalist out of Vancouver. She works for CBC, so she started this like all-female Indigenous Zoom group. so
Wow.
yeah, so we had our first one last night, and it was like amazing. It was just chill, and it was like we were a sounding board for each other. We were like a support group. We were just joking around, and it lasted for 3.5 hours. And like
Oh my gosh.
it was just awesome. And so we're going to do it again. And we have my former boss, Karen Police, on it from APTN. And it's a much needed place for us to be, because we're all craving that support, that only we can provide to each other. So I'm so grateful for that.
Oh, wow. I'm so happy for you. And
Mhm.
yes, our women, we really, we especially thrive and, glow when we are connected to each other and having that sense of community, even though physically right now we're not able to really sit together because of this COVID. But I'm so happy to hear you have that community. And
Thank you.
I think that's amazing. And whoever you're mentoring is just so blessed, because they're going to learn some really, really not just skills that pertain to this career of journalism, but some true life skills. Brandi,
Mm,
you are a walking toolbox of many life skills that can support and help anybody in their life. I'm learning as I'm listening to you right now. And I I was just thinking about our first interaction when you had interviewed myself and my niece.
mhm.
I just picked her up from school that day, and I had her for the afternoon. And we usually have our auntie days, and that was one of our auntie days. And she was excited for the interview, and we
Aw.
had you on my Bluetooth in the car, and she was just, and after the interview, she's like, "Well, how did I sound, Auntie?
Aw.
Did it sound okay?" And she really enjoyed talking to
You
you.
were a pro.
Yeah.
Like, you guys were pro. You knew what you were doing. Well, you're a teacher, right? So you're a good communicator. No, that was so. And then we just kept in touch through, social media, and
Yes.
followed each other's journeys and stuff like that. So that's, yeah.
Well, you have a gift of creating space for people to feel safe and share their stories. and
Yeah.
and yeah, I remember my niece, she said, "Wow, I really like talking to Brandi. She made me feel comfortable." And
Aw.
I just told her, just speak from the heart,
Yes.
and Brandi's going to tell our story. And I know she's going to help us get the word out there about this Truth and Reconciliation project. And I want to thank you. I want to
Mm.
thank you again for telling such a beautiful, shedding light on what we're doing at the school level with other kids, and in Calgary.
Yeah.
And thank you for doing that. And I'm so happy, like you said, we've remained in touch, and I love following your journey, and I can't wait to see where else your journey takes you. And I'll always keep you in my prayers, that you're safe, and that you, as you continue to do this work, that you feel lifted up by our communities.
Oh my gosh. This is wow. I'm so grateful. Just wow. I'm so grateful for you and everything that you're doing. And I just like, also, I'm so excited about your podcast and your vision. I mean, I think that it's going to explode. And I'm just honored. I'm honored that I get to be a guest.
Wow, I feel uplifted by your words too. And thank you for telling these stories, and
Yeah.
also talking today and opening yourself up with your wisdom. And I know that everyone who's listening is going to, walk away reflecting on their everyday choices and how they can support the work you do. It's one thing when we hear information and we gather knowledge, but then to actually then the next step is to apply it and put it into our everyday lives. And so while you're doing the heavy lifting of, going in there, investigating, sharing and telling and reporting these stories, it's also our responsibility as society members who grasp that knowledge to be able to then apply into our everyday lives, so we can in turn support the work you do by helping to change things.
Absolutely.
All right, my dear. I want to get us into the final four here because I'm excited to ask you these questions. They're questions that I don't really, I have ideas of what I'm going to ask you. It's just a fun thing that I do with the guests at the end. I don't tell you what I'm going to ask you, and I actually formulate them as I'm talking to you because there's things that jump out to me. So I came up with some great final four questions for you. And you can just answer them however you want. Are you ready?
Sounds good.
All right. Where do you see the role of media in the next, let's say, 5 or 10 years?
Like mainstream media or?
Yes. Well, I guess let's say Indigenous media, because you're part of that community.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I think that we're in a place of decolonizing the media. So we are creating something that is going to be a new narrative of how we share our lives and experiences and our news with the world. And that's a journey that we're out discovering and creating right now. And so it's kind of like grassroots that way and indigenous that way. So I think
Oh.
that it will be obviously incorporating a lot of the technologies that we have, that such as social media and like multimedia. We have through video and print and podcasting. I think that we really will utilize a lot of the those resources in different ways, and I'm just excited to see how that unfolds, because we just have such a like we're in just such a time in our world where it's so open for us to communicate with each other. So it's pretty awesome.
Wow, I love that, and I'm looking forward to that, and I'm so glad there's people like you out there, helping to set that foundation. Because yeah, it's a new era, and times are changing, and yes, love it.
Hmm.
Okay, please finish the sentence. Indigenous women are.
Oh wow. Indigenous women are, gosh, how do I even put it into a sentence? We are meant to be where we are right now. We are
Mm,
rising. We are speaking. We are standing for our truths. We're standing for our ancestors, our children, our future generations. We we are women that believe that anything through prayer and resilience and community is possible. We are survivors. We are endurers. And we are wise, we're strong, and we're beautiful.
wow. Oh, I got goosebumps. That's amazing. Yes.
Yay!
Oh, okay. Wow. Yes. Um, what would you tell aspiring journalists or those new to the career of journalism?
Yeah, I would just tell them to um, go for it and to work from the heart. It sounds cliche, but it is key. We're not robots. Traditionally, society has taught journalists that they have to be so removed from the stories that they're telling and not be impacted by them. But I found the opposite. I'm involved and I care and I'm human, and it's okay. It's okay to be passionate about what you're doing and just be authentic. And when you're authentic, people will sense that, and they'll want to be authentic with you.
Wow. You're just, you're full of so many gems, Brandi. And I'm
Aw.
just, oh, it just makes me happy because other people are going to hear this. And, that's my hope for these podcast episodes with the guests that I get to
Yeah.
sit with. You get to share, your parts of yourself and help others and inspire others. And that's amazing. That's
Mm,
such wonderful. And I think that it can apply to anybody, journalism or
yes.
any sort of field. So thank you for sharing those wise words.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Final question of the final four. I just have to know, is Brandi a coffee or tea drinker, or which one is it?
Oh my gosh, it depends.
Okay.
Lately, I've switched to coffee, but for 3 months before, it was tea. But I got to get off my coffee binge because I tend to go overboard. So, so I need to get back on the tea because it's more healthy and it's more like cleansing. And the coffee is just kind of like hardcore. It's kind of like it's like I'm deep in the trenches. Get me another cup. So, yeah, for this month it's coffee, but it'll change next month. I'll go back to
I love that.
tea.
Oh, wow. It's been so wonderful just sitting with you, and um,
Yeah.
I'm glowing here from everything we've talked about and what you've shared. And by the way, I want to say congratulations on receiving the Human Rights Reporting Award from the Canadian Association of Journalists last year for your work with CBC's Beyond 94 project. And people, you need to Google that.
Oh, thank
The Beyond
you.
94 project. Yeah, congratulations, Brandi, and everything else you're doing. There's so much to celebrate in all that you have discovered and shared with the world, and with your own beautiful journey in life, and with being such an incredible, beautiful mother and woman. You uplift us as
Mm.
well. As much as the community stands behind you, you're also uplifting us and our peoples and honoring our histories and all that is to come, and look forward to as we continue to thrive as Indigenous
Mm.
peoples in this world.
I am just so thankful. I'm so honored. I'm privileged and blessed to do what I do, and I just happy to do it. Thank you so much, and I'll be following your work as you go, and let's keep in touch.
Absolutely. Wow. Okay. Well, virtual hugs here.
Yay!
And I'll tell you in Blackfoot until we meet again. Gadakiramatsen.
That's beautiful. Yay!
Yay. Isn't it amazing how people like Brandi Morin are out there changing lives simply in telling the stories of others, uncovering injustices, creating a voice, awareness, being wonderful advocates and warriors out there, shedding light on the important issues in our Indigenous communities. And I feel so honored to have sat with her and shared this very deep, enlightening, insightful, and very important conversation. And I'm so happy you all got to be part of it as well. And I know that you will walk away from this conversation today and you will think about the issues that you may be encountering or that you recognize in your communities, or the things that you're reading about and hearing about from Indigenous journalists around the world, because their voices are authentic and they are bringing the true awareness of what is happening in our Indigenous communities. I know that I'm going to continue to dig deeper myself as an Indigenous woman and community member and educator. and continue on learning about these things, and not only learning about them, but applying what it is I learned, because that is how we create change in the world. Wow, such a beautiful person Brandi Morin is. As you will want to continue to follow her on her amazing and wonderful journey as a human rights journalist, I will provide all the links on our Buzzsprout page, as well as our Instagram and our other pages that you can access. Stay strong, stay informed, and stay connected. Have a beautiful and blessed day. God dak yidamutsin.